All right, let's dive into this world of con artists. We've got some really interesting research you sent over on their psychology and how they actually pull off these cons and how to spot them.
Yeah.
Excerpts from the psychology and tactics of con artists.
Right.
So by the end of this deep dive, hopefully, not only will we be able to recognize a con, but like understand the why.
Exactly.
Like, why do they do it? What's going on in their heads?
Yeah. I think it's tempting to think that con artists, maybe they have some sort of deceit gene or they're just born different from the rest of us. But
Right.
the research really suggests that it's a lot more complex than that.
Yeah, it's like it's not just nature. It's that whole recipe of personality and how they were raised and, just the opportunities that they had.
Right.
I mean, I've always wondered, like, how much of it is hardwired versus learned?
Well, that's where it gets really fascinating, right? I think, certain personality traits like a lack of empathy, for example, are definitely more common in con artists. But think about it this way, like, how does that lack of empathy actually kind of play out?
Right.
Is it a complete inability to understand others' feelings? Or do they just choose to ignore them? Kind of chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not like everyone who struggles with empathy is out there running scams, you know what I mean? So what else is going on?
Well, the research mentions those early experiences being really key.
Yeah.
And so, just imagine growing up and seeing dishonesty all around you.
Right.
It can actually normalize manipulation as a way of interacting with the world.
Yeah, like it's acceptable. Like this is normal.
Exactly. And so, you think about those kind of classic street hustler archetypes. It's almost like they've absorbed these tactics by osmosis.
Right. It makes me think of like all those nature versus nurture debates. That we all sort of have different normals based on how we were raised and what we were exposed to.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, like, have they been able to pinpoint like specific experiences that will push someone towards a life of con artistry?
It's not necessarily a simple cause and effect.
Right.
But it's more like those early experiences create a foundation. And, so if you lack that guidance about ethical behavior, or if you witness dishonesty being rewarded,
right,
it can really skew your moral compass.
And that raises a really important point for me and for anyone listening to this. Like, think about the environments that you were exposed to growing up. How did they shape your own views on honesty and trust? You know what I mean?
It's such a fascinating question. It's like we all have this internal scale of what's acceptable.
Right.
And those early experiences almost calibrate that scale.
Yeah, like what's okay?
Right.
What's not okay?
Exactly.
What am I willing to put up with? Or what am I gonna, even maybe participate in? So, okay, I need some real world examples to illustrate this for me.
Sure.
I'm fascinated by the different types of cons mentioned in the research. What really jumps out at you when you think of con artists? What comes to mind?
Well, the romance scams are especially kind of heartbreaking, I think.
Really?
Those
are dumb.
They can go on for years.
Oh, yeah.
And the emotional impact and the devastation that they cause is just, it's really...
It's more than just money. You know what I mean?
It is.
It's that betrayal of trust.
Yeah.
Like you really thought you had this connection with somebody.
Right.
And then to find out that it was all fake. Like, that's got to be incredibly damaging.
It is.
Yeah.
And it speaks to how adaptable con artists are in a way.
Right.
Like they find that weakness, they find that vulnerability, and they just exploit it for their own gain.
Right. Like they're almost reading people, you know. Like what button can I push to get what I want? It's amazing. It's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
I don't want to become paranoid about everyone I meet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I understand.
Like how do we protect ourselves without becoming overly suspicious?
I think that's a really good point. And the research actually offers some pretty practical advice about how to protect yourself.
Because what can we actually do?
Well, one of the things that the source really emphasizes is being skeptical.
Okay.
If something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
That's good advice. I mean, like that's something my mom always told me. But
right.
But how do you balance that skepticism with still being open to new people and experiences?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to shut myself off from the world.
Right. No, it's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily about being suspicious of everyone you meet. It's more about being discerning,
Okay.
paying attention to those little inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Those things that just don't quite add up.
Can you give me an example? Like
Yeah.
what kind of inconsistencies?
Well, think about, excessive flattery or charm.
Okay.
We all love to be complimented.
Right. Yeah.
But if someone is laying it on a little too thick, it could be a tactic to disarm you
Okay.
and gain your trust.
So it's about being aware of those subtle manipulations, even in everyday interactions.
Oh, yeah.
Not just like big scams,
Right, right.
but just how people are trying to use these tactics to get what they want.
Right. And another red flag, I think, is creating a sense of urgency or scarcity.
Okay.
So con artists will often use phrases like, this is a limited time offer,
Right.
or you have to act now, to kind of pressure their victims into making a hasty decision.
Got it. Got it.
Have you ever felt that kind of pressure, like maybe to buy something you didn't really need?
Oh, all the time. Especially with those like flash sale emails,
Yeah,
like,
this-
oh no, this is ending soon. I gotta get it. I gotta get it.
Exactly, yeah. And think about how those tactics are playing on your emotions.
Yeah.
Con artists are masters of understanding human psychology.
Yeah.
They know how to tap into our fears and desires to get what they want.
It's amazing and a little terrifying
Right.
how easily we can be manipulated. Like are there certain personality types that are more susceptible?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's not always that straightforward.
Okay.
While certain traits, like being overly trusting or having a strong need for approval,
Right.
can make someone more vulnerable,
Sure.
ultimately anyone can fall victim to a skilled con artist.
So it really is about being aware of those tactics,
Exactly.
regardless of your personality.
Right. It's about having that knowledge.
Yeah.
And another key piece of advice from the source is don't be afraid to ask questions. If something feels off, don't be afraid to push back
Right.
and demand clarification.
Yeah, it's like that saying, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
Exactly.
Right.
Con artists often rely on people's reluctance to question authority
Right.
or appear foolish.
Sure.
But remember, it's your money.
Right.
It's your time, your well-being at stake.
It's your life. Right.
You have the right to be informed
Right.
and to make informed decisions.
So to protect ourselves, we need to be skeptical.
Right.
We need to ask questions and trust our gut.
Absolutely.
But what about those big, elaborate cons?
Right.
The ones that seem so sophisticated.
Right.
How do those even work?
Those are the ones that often make headlines.
Right, right.
Like those big Ponzi schemes that you hear about.
Yeah, where people lose their life savings.
Exactly.
It's amazing how they can convince people to part with such large sums of money.
They're very persuasive.
Yeah.
And they often create these elaborate schemes
Right.
that sound legitimate,
Right.
but are actually designed to steal your money.
Okay.
They might promise, unrealistic returns or use high-pressure tactics
Right.
to create a sense of urgency.
It's almost like they're creating their own reality.
Yeah, in a way they are.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The source actually mentions that many con artists end up believing their own lies.
Whoa.
It's called cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
When our actions and beliefs don't align,
Right.
it creates a sense of discomfort.
Sure.
So to alleviate that discomfort,
Right.
con artists convince themselves that what they're doing is justified or even necessary.
So they're not just manipulating others, they're manipulating themselves.
It's a fascinating psychological phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it can make them even more dangerous because they truly believe in what they're selling.
Wow. That's a chilling thought.
It is.
Yeah.
And it underscores the importance of critical thinking.
Right.
Don't just accept things at face value,
Right.
especially when it comes to your finances
Yeah.
or personal information.
Right.
Do your own research.
Yeah.
Seek independent advice.
Get a second opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And trust your instincts.
Okay, so to protect ourselves from these elaborate schemes, we need to be extra vigilant.
Right.
Do our due diligence and not be afraid to say no
Absolutely.
when something feels wrong.
Saying no can be your strongest defense.
Right.
Don't let anyone pressure you into making a decision you're not comfortable with.
So we've talked a lot about individual responsibility, but
Right.
is there anything we can do as a society to combat con artistry?
It's a good question.
Yeah. It feels like it's becoming more and more prevalent.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Con artistry isn't just an individual problem.
Right.
It's a societal one.
Yeah.
And we need to create a culture that values honesty and integrity.
Okay.
And that starts with education.
I like that.
What if we started teaching kids about con artistry in school.
That's an interesting idea.
Right.
I mean, it's a life skill, right?
Exactly.
Like knowing how to spot a con could save you a lot of trouble down the road.
Absolutely. We can equip young people with the critical thinking skills they need to make informed decisions and to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate them.
Right, from an early age.
Yeah. And we can also work to strengthen our laws and regulations to make it more difficult for con artists to operate.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Exactly.
Education, prevention, and law enforcement all working together.
Absolutely. It's going to take a collective effort to really combat this problem.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the psychology of con artists to the tactics they use.
Right.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
Yeah.
It's a complex and ever-evolving phenomenon.
Right.
But understanding how con artists operate is the first step in protecting ourselves and our communities.
I agree, and that knowledge is empowering. Absolutely.
It gives us the tools to make informed decisions and to navigate the world with a little more awareness.
Yeah.
But I want to shift gears a bit.
Oh.
We've focused a lot on the negative side of things.
Right.
But I'm curious, is there anything positive we can learn from con artists?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, they are masters of persuasion and influence.
Right.
So is there anything we can take away from that?
Well, we certainly don't want to condone their unethical behavior.
Right.
There are some valuable lessons I think we can glean from their tactics. Not to deceive others, of course, but to improve our own communication and persuasion skills.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Okay, well, think about how con artists build rapport and establish trust.
Okay.
They understand the importance of connecting with people on an emotional level.
Right.
They're great listeners.
Yeah.
They make you feel understood.
And they create a sense of shared experience.
It's almost like they're creating a custom-designed con for each person.
Exactly. And while we shouldn't manipulate others,
we
can learn from their ability to create genuine connections.
Right.
So think about it this way. How can you use those same skills to build stronger relationships in your own life?
I like that. And it's about using those powers for good.
Right.
For building authentic relationships and fostering collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another lesson I think we can learn is the power of storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah. Con artists often weave these elaborate narratives to capture their victims' attention and imagination.
Yeah.
They paint a picture.
Yeah.
They create a sense of urgency.
Right.
And make you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
So it's about finding the right balance between being persuasive and being ethical.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's about using our influence for positive purposes,
Yeah.
for inspiring others, motivating change, and building a better world.
So we've talked about, the big picture, but I want to zoom in a little bit.
Okay.
What are some red flags? Like some telltale signs that someone might be trying to con us?
Well, it's all about, spotting those subtle cues, those little inconsistencies. Like, we talked about excessive flattery or charm.
Right.
Con artists often use charisma to kind of disarm their victims.
Okay.
And gain their trust.
Right, like someone who's laying it on a little too thick.
Exactly.
But how can you tell the difference between someone who's, just being friendly and someone who has ulterior motives?
Yeah, that's a good question. Pay attention to your gut feeling.
Okay.
Does something feel off?
Right.
Are they pushing you to make a decision quickly or revealing too much personal information too soon? Those are all red flags.
So it's about slowing down, taking a breath, and not letting yourself be rushed.
Exactly.
What else should we be on the lookout for?
Watch out for inconsistencies in their stories or explanations.
Okay.
Do the details change when they're retelling something?
Yeah.
Do they avoid answering direct questions?
Right.
Or give vague responses?
Okay.
These could be signs that, they're not being truthful.
It's like our gut is picking up on these subtle signals, even if we're not consciously aware of them.
Right.
But sometimes it's hard to trust your gut, especially when, we want to believe someone.
That's true. Con artists are experts at playing on our emotions, our desires, and our vulnerabilities.
Right. Yeah.
They might target someone who is lonely, grieving, or, experiencing financial difficulties.
So it's important to be extra cautious we're feeling vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And remember, con artists can be anyone.
Yep.
They might be charming, charismatic, and seemingly trustworthy.
Right.
Don't let appearances fool you.
So is there like a simple takeaway? Something that we can use to protect ourselves from becoming a victim?
I think the best defense is knowledge and awareness.
Okay.
If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Trust your instincts, ask questions, and don't be afraid to say no.
You know, it's interesting. We've been talking about how con artists exploit our weaknesses, but I'm curious, is there anything positive we can learn from them?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
You know, I mean, they are masters of persuasion and influence.
Yeah, they are.
So is there anything we can take away from that?
Well, while we certainly don't want to condone their unethical behavior,
Right.
there are some valuable lessons I think we can glean from their tactics.
Okay.
Not to deceive others, of course,
Right,
but
right.
to improve our own communication and persuasion skills.
I'm intrigued. What kind of lessons are we talking about?
Well, think about how con artists build rapport and establish trust.
Okay, yeah.
They understand the importance of connecting with people on an emotional level.
Right.
They're great listeners. They make you feel understood.
Yeah.
And they create a sense of shared experience.
It's almost like they're creating a custom designed con for each person.
Exactly. And while we shouldn't manipulate others,
Right.
we can learn from their ability to create genuine connection.
Okay.
So think about it this way. How can you use those same skills to build stronger relationships in your own life?
I like that. Yeah, it's about using those powers for good,
Right.
for building authentic relationships and fostering collaboration.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of con artists,
Right.
I think it's important to remember that there's also a lot of good in the world.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
It's easy to get caught up in the negativity,
Right.
the deception, the manipulation.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that there are people who are genuinely kind,
Yeah.
trustworthy, and compassionate.
I completely agree. And while it's important to be aware of the risks,
Right.
we shouldn't let fear and cynicism overshadow our belief in humanity.
Well said.
Yeah.
So to our listener, thanks for joining us on this journey.
Of course.
We hope you learn something valuable.
Yeah.
Something that will help you navigate
Right.
the complexities of the world
Absolutely.
with a little more awareness and a lot more wisdom.
Remember, stay informed,
Yes.
stay vigilant,
Yeah.
and most importantly, stay true to yourself.
That's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring,
Absolutely.
keep learning, and
Yes.
keep diving deep.
I love it.
This is DigitView.